Minglaba and welcome to MI Radio's Myanmar Today. I'm Henry Zin. Ministry of Health and Sports announced a release to care about the COVID-19 outbreak in the country. While many parts of the world have witnessed death from coronavirus, the first death in Myanmar due to COVID-19 has occurred. And we will later be joined by Xu Qingtuo, a senior journalist from China Media Group, on COVID-19's impact on China's trade and economy and resumption of businesses in China. All of that on this edition of Myanmar Today, but now let's take a look at what's happening in local news. The following is the televised speech of State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, who's also the chairperson of the National Level Central Committee on Prevention, Control and Treatment of Coronavirus Disease, reporting the updated situation of the coronavirus infection in Myanmar. Out of 14 cases checked and confirmed positive and hospitalized, one passed away Tuesday. The individual had come back from Australia via Singapore recently. Based on the nature of COVID-19, those older adults suffering from various diseases with low resistance are more at high risk and vulnerable. In her speech, the State Councillor said, "Gathering at home with relatives and friends and staying close to each other would be dangerous. Stay at home as much as you can. However, some people with accommodation problems would have difficulties," she said. "For a certain period of time, all of our people need to hang on with strong determination and bear the difficulties. If each of us works with a full sense of duty to stop the spread of COVID-19, we will be able to overcome this challenge." She added on by saying, after the Ministry of Health and Sports had announced that there could be a big outbreak of the pandemic, there were some people who raised their voices for a lockdown while others were worried about when the lockdown was coming. Therefore, in the national interest, community quarantine may be carried out in some regions in which the access or exit is denied. If such a situation occurs, a committee headed by the first vice president has already been organized for the purpose of taking systematic measures for the sufficient and sustainable supply of provisions and medicines, as well as for the political stability in such a region under special care. We will inform you as early as possible if there is a need for community quarantine for a particular region. Fake online accounts used a photo to spread false news that State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi met with a COVID-19 positive patient. Director General Uzote from the Ministry of State Councillor Office denied the rumor, and the photo was between the State Councillor and the UN Resident Coordinator for Myanmar at the call in Naypyidaw on 23rd of March. The Director General explained the person with treatments in isolation at a 1,000-bed hospital in Naypyidaw was the office staff of UN Special Envoy to Myanmar. He said, quote, "I officially answered that both the President and the State Councillor are in good health and are serving their state duties. They were neither in self-quarantine nor home quarantine. We are carefully arranging calls by visitors during this time of the COVID-19 disease." Senior Tamador officers held a coordination meeting to join nationwide measures against the prevention and treatment of the COVID-19 pandemic. In response to the discussions, Senior General May Aung Hlaing explained the readiness of 2,000 beds and 15,000 beds for quarantine and treatments at the transit centers of defense services in Yangon and Naypyidaw, respectively. Some facilities of defense services could be used for quarantine centers for treatments and sheltering for the coronavirus patients. The Myanmar Economic Cooperation and the Myanmar Economic Holdings Limited will continue operating their fully invested companies of food and basic commodity and will reduce 50% capacities of the other factories till the end of April. Meanwhile, the operation of joint venture businesses will be discussed with foreign partners. Senior General May Aung Hlaing also instructed the Tamador personnel and staff members to follow disciplines and orders to stay at homes and staff quarters, and the Navy vessels Tan Luin, Mijina and Motama to be used as the hospitals. The Senior General urged the military medical experts to provide healthcare services, while the National Level Central Committee for COVID-19 Prevention, Control and Treatment have been formed, and civil doctors, nurses and health workers under the Ministry of Health and Sports are busy with their respective assignments. That's all with the local news. Alright, we're now joined by Xu Qingtuo, a senior journalist from China Media Group, to have a little chat over COVID-19's impact on China's trade and economy and resumption of businesses in China. Now, last week saw a virtual summit amongst the G20 leaders, calling in urgent need to restore the global economy that is under substantial pressure due to the pandemic. First off, I'd like to know how big or horrifying is this COVID-19's impact on China's trade and economy in January and February.
Or as for the resumption of business operations in China, it's getting better and better, I would say, with the situation against the virus is increasingly, I would say, people are increasingly confident of the safety and the security of conducting their normal businesses in China. For example, if you look at the figures by the government, as of March 17th, industrial companies, major industrial companies, 90% of them were up and running as of March 17th in most of the provinces in China. For smaller companies, it's a bit difficult for them because there are new requirements and also there are difficulties for them to fully recover from this from the mode against the virus to a new normal, let's say. So 60% of them have recovered as of the middle of March. And one key indicator I would say about this business activity is Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak. Last week, you see everything is coming to normal. The train services and air services are resuming, and also visitors are also arriving in Wuhan for the first time in 2 or 3 months. So that's optimistic, I would say, very encouraging development in terms of a business operation in China. And the rest of the country, of course, is doing better than in Wuhan or in Hubei province because in many of places, basically, almost a month time, there was a recording of 0 local infection. So I would say it's rather safe, if not completely safe, for people to go outside to do whatever they need to do. Even the cinemas, the restaurants are open for people to come and consume. So I would say normalcy is coming back in a gradual manner. Beijing is a bit slower. At the end of this March, the expectation is like if you look at the traffic, the indicators, like 85% of the traffic will be resumed in the weekdays. I would say that represents the business operation of 85% returning to the normal operation.
All right. And tell me more about the resumption of businesses in China. We are aware that Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak, has resumed a certain degree of business in the city. Give us some updates on these business resumptions in Wuhan and across China.
Well, the economic fallout of this coronavirus crisis obviously is huge, as the numbers, in particular, the key indicators of the economic activity have all come down to a degree that's beyond the prediction of many economists. For example, if you look at this industrial production, which is down by more than 13%. That's a new record actually setting for many years. And if you look at the consumption side, it's down by more than 20%. That's also a new record, actually. And if you look at the fixed asset investment, that mostly includes investment in infrastructure, property business, and also the purchasing of equipment by companies. These figures are down by more than 23%. So all these figures are, I would say, to a certain degree, depressing to look at. But of course, people understand. I mean, if you shut down the whole city or the entire country, I mean, the economic activities were brought to a standstill. You expect very little growth. And in terms of trade, it's in a similar situation. We don't have the exact numbers, but you can imagine because partly for January and February, even in normal times, the figures will be down because it's the biggest festival, the Spring Festival. So everybody goes home for family reunion. So there's basically very little business activity. Factories will be closed, plants will be closed. So in terms of trade, there's very little, I would say. But this year is different, let's say. It's almost like an extension of this holiday period because of the coronavirus crisis. So the closure of factories, the closure of plants were also extended to a long period of time, let's say. And so even there's a demand for certain products, for certain services, but business in China, like factories and the plants, they are not able to provide the necessary manufacturing because of the restrictive measures imposed by the government to deal with the spread of the coronavirus.
All right, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Xu. We'll carry on with the next report. The Ministry of Health and Sports announced a release on Monday that COVID-19 can cause an outbreak in the country regarding the returnees from the Myanmar border gates. Union Minister Dr. Myanmar Today also stressed the importance of the participation of the returnees in the community-based facility quarantine programs. Since there's been an increase in the numbers of the COVID-19 positive cases, Yangon City Development Committee has sent request letters to all restaurants to allow takeaway services only. Pomo will tell us more.
The Ministry of Health and Sport announced a release on 30 March that the COVID-19 can outbreak in the country related to the returning from the Myanmar method. The Union Minister also tried to make a list of restrictions on the returning from Thailand and forced them to participate in community-based facility quarantine program. Over 23,000 returning who crossed the Myanmar bridge were back to Myanmar from 19 to 29 March. Regarding the returnees, there has been a gradual increase in the numbers of the COVID-19 patients in Myanmar, as the Ministries of Health and Sport confirmed the numbers of cases up to 15 and over 561 persons closely contact with them. U Tan Nai U, the representative of Babedan constituency, said about the returning cases.
We have found the
COVID-19 positive patients among those returnees as we expected. So we encourage the returnees to stay 14 days quarantine and force the local people not to do public gatherings. It is the best way to prevent that COVID-19. And we also found that 2 local transmissions with this virus. It is a dangerous time for all of our people. That's why I'd like to encourage the people to follow the rules and regulations of the Ministry of Health and Sports.
As with the increasing number of the COVID-19 cases, Yangon City Development Committee has sent the request letter to all the restaurants in 45 townships in the city municipal area to operate takeaway services only. However, the market are still opening and the committee has no plan to shut them down. And he continued to say.
Recover
We get the local orders from the Yangon region government not to do public gatherings and events, and they also forced the restaurants to operate takeaway services since 29th of March. This is also a part of preventive measures against COVID-19. Our people usually like to take risks in some cases in unnecessary situations. If something happens like the death rate increases or something, we don't have enough medical supplies and support. I also like to encourage not to do panic buying. Our government tried to have all essential things we need in stock, and all administrators from all townships in Yangon try to carry out precautionary measures as much as they can.
Because of the local order for restaurant and shop to operate takeaway services, the restaurant owner shared his opinion on the action.
We are now operating takeaway systems. Some workers went back to their hometown. The amount of supplies is lower now than the previous days. The customers are few. There is nothing we can do right now, so we have to follow the government orders because it is very important time for us right now.
The Department of Civil Aviation announced that Myanmar is no longer allowing the landings of all international commercial passenger flights in all Myanmar airports to prevent the importation of COVID-19 from 29 March to 13 April. On the same day, Myanmar also stopped issuing all types of visas to all foreign nationals, according to the statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the suspension will be enforced until 30 April. As soon as the Ministry of Health and Sport confirmed the 8 positive cases, Mandalay City ordered to shut down 41 big markets and famous beaches in Myanmar. Top beach destinations like Changda and Resumption were closed to all locals and foreign tourists until the end of April by the Ayeyarwady region government, and the beaches in Myanmar, the Nilai region, were also closed to all locals and foreign tourists. Though the Yangon region government spoke that there has no plan for Yangon to shut down on 29 March. Around the world, there are 758 coronavirus cases, 36,405 death cases, and 151,766 who have recovered. In Myanmar, there are 561 suspected patients, 15 positive lab cases, and 497 who have tested negative. This is Pomo reporting from Myanmar International Radio.
That's a report on the Ministry of Health and Sports announcing a release to care about the COVID-19 outbreak in the country. All right, let's have a look at the currency rates now from Myanmar's central bank and the stock exchange. $1 is at 1,394 kyats. 1 Chinese renminbi is at 196 kyats. 1 euro is at 1,531 kyats. 1 pound sterling is at 1,719 kyats. 1 Singapore dollar is at 977 kyats. 1 Malaysian ringgit is at 323 kyats. 1 Thai baht is at 42 kyats, and the Indian rupee is at 18 kyats. Gold is trading at $1,583. Silver is at $14, and Brent crude oil is at $20. On the Yangon Stock Exchange, FMI is at 10,000. MTSH is at 3,500. MCB is at 7,700. FPB is at 21,000. TMH is at 2,700. Stay with us as we bring you one last report on Myanmar Today. On Tuesday morning, the first death from COVID-19 in Myanmar was announced. The patient was a 69-year-old man who was suffering from nasal cavity cancer. Till Tuesday, there are 15 confirmed cases of COVID-19 infection. We'll hear more from Taras Wizin.
Out of 15 confirmed cases for COVID-19 infection, case 05, who is a 69-year-old male, has been announced to be the first deceased patient in the morning of 31st March. The Ministry of Health and Sports released the detailed information about the disease of the patient, case 05. The deceased patient, who is 69 years old, living in Mingla township of Yangon, has been suffering from the cancer of the nasal cavity since January of 2019. He was treated with radiation therapy in Australia till May of 2019. In February of 2020, he went back to Australia for the secondary checkup. He flew back from Australia to Singapore on 10 March and landed in Myanmar on 14 March. Starting from 18 March, he had been suffering the symptoms of cough, fever, and sore throat, so that he was hospitalized at the ICU of Yangon General Hospital on 25 March. His laboratory result showed positive for COVID-19 disease, and he was confirmed to be the case 05 of Myanmar. On 27 March, he was hospitalized at ICU of Weibagi Specialist Hospital. At 7:25 a.m. in the morning of 31st March, the decease of the patient case 05 was announced, and the Ministry of Health and Sports released the cause of death. According to the Ministry of Health and Sports (MOHS), the causes of death are acute respiratory distress syndrome with septic shock, COVID-19 with severe community-acquired pneumonia, and underlying CNOs with radiotherapy.
The death is because of immediate cause, which is acute respiratory distress syndrome with septic shock. He was also suffering severe community-acquired pneumonia because of COVID-19 infection. For the underlying cause, he was possessed of nasal cancer. Because of the treatment of radiotherapy, his immune system was getting down. He had been suffered from cancer and taking radiotherapy and necessary medicine, so that his immune system was not strong enough to fight against COVID-19.
Elder people, persons with chronic diseases, people who have been using steroids for long run, and those suffering from immunodeficiency are more likely to suffer from life-threatening symptoms when infected with COVID-19.
Out of the rest 13 confirmed patients, case 8 is being treated at ICU. She is 60 years old and also has underlying diseases. Except the elder patient, the others are in good conditions. They are professional healthcare professors at the respective hospitals, where the infected patients are being hospitalized. They are giving medical treatment according to the guidelines adopted by WHO.
The family members of case 05 are still in home quarantine. The case 10 who had contact with the deceased case 05 is being hospitalized at Wibagi Specialist Hospital.
The people from the ward, administration team, and volunteer group are assisting in any essential aid for the bereaved family members. The dead body was transferred to Tame Bay Cemetery by volunteer group. Although 3 family members can come to the cemetery, his eldest son, who lives in Australia, requested the family not to go but to stay home and to follow the guidelines of the government.
According to the data, at 12:30 noon of 31st March, there are 517 persons under investigation, including 2 suspected cases. 77 laboratory results are pending. At 8 p.m. of 31st March, MOHS announced 1 more confirmed cases, so the total cases increased to 15, including 1 deceased case. Around the world, about 800,000 cases are infected with the pandemic COVID-19, and over 38,000 deaths are counted till March 31st. That's all for now. This is Thora Suisin from MI Radio.
And that's all we have for today's reports. And it's probably time to check on some international news here on Myanmar Today. Viruses don't discriminate, but apparently people do. As COVID-19 spreads fast, so does racism against Asians and Chinese. Are people consumed by fear, or has anti-China become the new political correctness?
COVID-19 is spreading wide and fast. From Asia to Europe to America, confirmed cases are climbing on a daily basis. An increasing number of politicians, Hollywood celebrities, and professional athletes are testing positive for the virus. Viruses don't discriminate, but apparently people do.
We've seen the awakening of a latent racism, which we already knew was there, but which is now completely out in the open, with words and behavior that are disrespectful, impolite, or even clearly racist.
In the face of an unknown virus, misinformation coupled with fear could incite xenophobia, but there have never been such shocking levels of blatant racism against Asians or Chinese. Are people just captivated by the fear, or has anti-China become the new politically correct? Let's turn the clock back to the last pandemic, the H1N1 influenza in 2009. As much as 24% of the global population contracted the disease that originated in the US, but did people call it the American virus and discriminate against Americans? Not really. But when an outbreak started in China,
the Wuhan coronavirus.
The Wuhan coronavirus.
The China coronavirus.
that's because viruses and diseases are always linked to uncivilized cultures in the Western discourse. If an American or European has it, that's a tragedy. If a Chinese has it, that's not wrong at all. They believe it is China's weird eating habits that started the outbreak, although the origin of the virus has not yet been figured out, and it is only a small minority of Chinese who eat wild animals.
This coronavirus originated in China, and I have not heard one word from the Chinese. A simple "I'm sorry."
So, when Jesse Waters asked for an apology from China, he sincerely believed that it was China being a troublemaker for America. Never mind that the origin of COVID-19 is still unclear, and that WHO officials have highly praised China's efforts that bought other countries time to prepare. No, racism has never left, and this time around it has reared its ugly head even stronger as it was coupled with a political agenda to demonize China. A glimpse at the US media shows how prejudice and arrogance against China have become a given. If China locked down a city to prevent the spread of the virus, it was coming, quote, at a great cost to people's livelihoods and personal liberties, end quote. But if a European country, Italy, is doing the same, it was, quote, risking its economy in an effort to contain Europe's worst coronavirus outbreak, end quote. You simply cannot explain double standards in a better way. But does it even matter? The refusal is a clear display of power. It means they don't have to engage with the Chinese to write on China. Their prejudice is all they have to know. But again, what more could you expect when some of the most powerful politicians in this country are also playing the victim card? As the COVID-19 spreads in America, President Donald Trump has tried to play down the situation.
It's a very contagious virus. It's incredible, but it's something that we have tremendous control of.
As I've said many times, and I'll repeat it, the worst is yet ahead for us.
But when the sober reality is too hard to ignore, it's the blaming China game again.
So the desire to blame people for epidemics is as old as history. And so whenever we have epidemics, and going back hundreds of years, you can find people pointing the finger at other people, blaming Jewish people in medieval Europe for plague, blaming Chinese people for bubonic plague in San Francisco. But right now, the epidemic is a global epidemic. It doesn't really matter where it started as part of our efforts to control it now. And all of these political questions, trying to blame different people, are really distracting us from the current challenge.
Of course, any government needs time to respond to a new virus. Confusion at the beginning is understandable, but what's not excusable is how politicians have tried to deflect blame, stigmatize China, and create more hatred and fear when the entire world is facing the same enemy and cooperation is urgently needed.
The pandemic of influenza in 2009 originated in North America. We didn't call it the North American flu. So it's very important that we have the same approach when it comes to other viruses to avoid that. And we ask for that to be the intent that everybody has. This is a time for solidarity. This is a time for facts. This is a time to move forward together to fight this virus together.
Meanwhile, police in India has been filmed beating alleged violators of the country's coronavirus lockdown. Muslim and Hindu worshippers were hit with sticks at their places of worship, and police used violence to disperse crowds at major bus depots. Migrants have also been filmed being hosed down with bleach by Indian authorities. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced a 21-day lockdown of India to fight the spread of COVID-19. Migrants are leaving the cities en masse, some saying they will walk 500 miles back to their villages. Health experts warn that this could actually cause the virus to spread more as infected people return home to isolated areas. Chinese President and General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, Xi Jinping, inspected wetland conservation and technology-based urban management on Tuesday in the city of Hangzhou of East China's Zhejiang province. And that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining me on Myanmar Today. I'm Henry Zin. Have a great day, everyone. Stay home, stay safe, practice good personal hygiene, and follow instructions strictly, and always be on high alert for important news. I'll see you again. Goodbye.